Hello and welcome to the Reef Dork Extra channel. Now today I'm going to run through the my top 5 favourite pieces of equipment that I've bought this year. The criteria I've set for this, it doesn't have to be equipment that's brought out this year, just equipment that I've bought. And the only other criteria I've set is that it has to be something I've paid for with my own money, not something that I've been given for free. So with those criteria set, let's get stuck in. And number 1 is the Tunze Aquawind 2 cooling fan. And what I'm going to do for all of these is tell you very quickly why I like it and the things I don't like about it, if anything. The Tunze Aquawind 2 cooling fan, quite simply, it's small and unobtrusive and not very noisy. All fans do a pretty similar job. I just had on my Cade tank over my shoulder. I just had a couple of PC fans, 20 quid off Amazon, running over that, and that did the exact same job as the Tunze Aquawind, which costs £100 by the way, but they look a bit ugly, and the hydroponics fan I have on my main tank looks really ugly, although it is very effective, and it was only 20 quid. But whilst the Tunze Aquawind is very expensive, and that's the only thing I really don't like about it, it's very sleek and unobtrusive, and that's actually quite important as you don't want it to ruin the aesthetic of your reef tank. So that's why it makes this list. Sticking with Tunze, and we move on to number 2, and that is the High Jet pump. Now this is an upgrade for the osmolator, the auto top off. The osmolator is the most popular, probably the most popular auto top off in the world, and with good reason, great reputation for reliability. But the Gen 1 version, which is the one I have, and I've had 3 of them, has a pump that is really noisy, and I actually think unacceptably noisy. The pros list on the Tunze High Jet is pretty short. It's quiet. It's not completely silent. It does still make some noise, but you've got to listen really closely to hear it. And it is much, much, much quieter than the stock pump on the Tunze osmolator. So for me personally, that makes it an essential upgrade. Things I don't like, well, I actually think it's fairly reasonably priced at £60, so I don't hate the price. And I suppose the only thing I don't like is that if you buy it on top of the Tunze osmolator Gen 1, it makes the whole system £260 or thereabout, which is a little bit expensive, and you could argue that it should have been included from the first place. But to be fair to Tunze, they have fixed that going forward, and the Gen 2 osmolator now comes without pump. So I don't really have anything else to hate about the High Jet. It's just a good bit of kit and makes my life better. Number 3 is the Nyos Torq reactor, which is a phosphate media reactor. Most of the phosphate reactors I've had in the past, and I've had several, have been either really fiddly to change the media, or they're very difficult to dial in so the media tumbles nicely. And GFO is most effective when it's tumbling gently in a reactor. So it's really important to get that right. The Nyos Torq reactor is fantastic at both of those things. You can swap out, it comes in 2 parts, a base docking station, which is just the pump, and the media chamber itself. Now you can actually buy 2 media chambers and just swap them out when you need to, and have one ready with new GFO sat in, ready to swap out. But the easy part of it is that you just swap it out. To swap it out, you just twist the media chamber off, pop it off, and you're done. You then twist the top off to empty the old GFO out, you pour some new stuff in, twist the top back on, and you just plonk the media chamber back in place on the dock, and it's that easy. And it sounds like a silly thing, but when maintenance is easy to do, you're far more likely to do it, and that's made a world of difference for me in how regularly I change my phosphate media. And the other thing I like about it is that it's really easy to get it dialed in. There's basically a pump with a docking station at the bottom with a small hole in the media chamber, so when you turn the media chamber, when you rotate it, it opens the hole bigger and smaller, which allows more or less water in, so it makes it very, very, very easy to adjust the level of flow in the chamber, and therefore get the phosphate media you're using tumbling to perfection. Things I don't like about it, the power cable is 1 meter long, which is far too short, and it means I need to use an extension cable. And because it's an AC pump, while that is very reliable and it will run for a long time, they're quite noisy. Now it's not too noisy, and actually I don't hear it above the ambient noise of my tank generally, but if you have a very quiet tank, you probably will hear it. So do bear that in mind, but I personally would put up with that anyway because it is that good. Number 4 is the one piece of equipment that's actually had a really significant difference on the health of my corals, and that is the Hanna digital refractometer. Now, for the last year or 2, I've been using this, the Hanna salinity tester, which is a digital conductivity pen. But the reason I've been using this is because it's very convenient. What I found though over time is that it, in fact, pretty much from the start, I think this loses calibration fairly quickly. And what I found over time is that it loses calibration really quickly. And it's got to the point that actually I don't trust it at all now, even straight after I've calibrated it. It reads low, which means that when you mix up new saltwater to do a water change, it will be higher in salinity than you want. And that has caused me a few salinity spikes in the last year or so that have had a detrimental impact on my corals. Since I've switched to the Hanna digital refractometer, that has all changed. It's been almost instant. Suddenly, I have an accurate reading that I can rely on for salinity, and my corals are noticeably much healthier almost immediately. Now, there are much cheaper ways of achieving the same thing. You can get an optical refractometer, but I personally don't get on with those. I find it really difficult to see them. You've got to mess around for ages getting the right light, then getting it in focus. And even when you get that, I just find it really difficult to read the exact spot on the graph. I find it difficult to read the lines. So for that reason, I don't like the optical refractometers, although they're probably the second best option in my opinion. But this digital refractometer uses the same technology, only it takes away the effort of me reading it and it gives me a digital readout, and that's why I love it. Downsides, there's only one. It's 350 quid, which is crazy money when you can get an optical refractometer for less than 50 quid. But frankly, if that gives me a reliable and accurate, trustworthy reading of salinity, it is money well spent. And the only other thing I'll say about this is that I've only had it for a few weeks, so this is not a long-term review by any stretch, and it could well be that it falls out of calibration and it's no use in 6 months. So wait for me to do a long-term review before you rush out and buy one, and I will do that. But if it's as good in a year's time as it is now, it will probably be the best thing I've ever bought for my reef tank. And the final thing on my list is the Deltec kalkwasser stirrer. Now, I've had this for almost completely a year, probably about 9 or 10 months. And the pros of it are that it is a space saver and it also reduces maintenance. My kalkwasser container before the kalkwasser stirrer was 100 litres, so it was absolutely huge, took up a load of space, and it only lasted about 3 weeks. The Deltec kalkwasser stirrer is less than 2 feet tall, really compact, and it's much quicker adding a little bit of kalkwasser powder into the chamber to top it up than it is mixing up a new batch of kalkwasser every 3 weeks. So those are quite simply the reasons I like it. And the things I don't like about it, well, there are a couple. Whilst I've made a review about this, which I'll link in the top corner of the screen, and I did like it at first. I thought it was a really good design, but I'm actually not so sure now. And I found that the outlet does get clogged from time to time, so you need to fairly regularly unclog it. But even when it's not clogged, instead of kalkwasser dripping out nicely out of the outlet, I find that it drips halfway back the outlet and then drips down onto itself. So the kalkwasser drips out onto the body of the kalkwasser stirrer, which leaves an awful crust there, and I have to scrape it off every couple of days, which I do find quite annoying. So actually the design isn't fantastic, and the other thing I like about it is that it costs £420, which is crazy money, and it should be half that price, particularly given it isn't a perfect design. But in spite of that, and if you can kind of grit your teeth, shut your eyes, hand over your credit card and pretend you're not paying 400 quid for an acrylic tube, it is actually really good, and it saves space and maintenance, which is why it makes this list. Now, I'd really like to hear from you guys with any equipment you bought this year that you absolutely love. So let me know in the comment section below. And of course, if you've got any questions, chuck them down there too. And if you enjoyed this video, give me a thumbs up and subscribe to the Reef Dork Extra channel. And until next time, happy reefing.